Ladies and gentlemen, this is Joe's Gunpla Garage coming at you with a review of the Real Grade 2.0 Gundam. Just real quick before getting into that, I wanted to thank everyone for 500 subscribers. We just hit that milestone and that is huge. When I log into the YouTube studio and I see more and more continued comments and likes and subscriptions, it really motivates me to continue making these videos for you guys, whether they're unboxings or reviews. Reviews do generally take a lot longer. This review itself took me about a week to do, and that doesn't include building. That's just scripting and filming and editing, all of that good stuff. So thank you for supporting me so far. I hope to continue seeing your likes and your comments and your subscriptions on videos as we continue to go down this journey and we keep looking at all these kits, because there is a lot to unpack here. Thank you for viewing this review of the Real Grade 2.0. I put a lot of time and effort into this review, so I really hope you enjoy it, and I can't wait to see you in the next video. Thank you so much.
It's been 45 years since the first series Mobile Suit Gundam has released. It has also been 14 years since the Real Grade line of model kits has released. To celebrate two milestones, Bandai has decided to officially release a 2.0 Real Grade RX-78-2 Gundam. The RX-78-2 Gundam is the Gundam that started it all, and has become such a cultural staple. There's a reason every time a new series comes out, the main mobile suit carries the white, blue, red, and yellow color scheme with it. It all stems from this guy right here, the Granddaddy Gundam. This is the latest iteration and design of the original Gundam, taking design cues from seemingly all different iterations of releases in the past. Taking a quick look at this, you can definitely see some influences from the design of Gundam from the Origin, the Perfect Grade Unleashed, the original design, as well as a little bit from the Kotoki design. This is a perfect blend of all RX-78-2 flavors that we've previously seen. Every design is subjective, and only you can decide if a design fits your tastes, but for me, this design is absolutely perfect. I don't want to besmirch the original design, but I do think this might be my favorite look of the Gundam. I also find this design really nails the look of the Gundam if it were to exist in real life. The added surface detail, armor splitting gimmick during movement and articulation, as well as all the greebling on the inner frame, is a massive improvement over the original Real Grade and a real testament to how far the line has come since its inception. With a first look and initial impressions out of the way, let's get into the build of this Gundam. There are 10 runners with 328 parts molded in 9 different colors, and that brings this classic design to real life. The colors are molded in the typical white, blue, red, and yellow colors that you're used to seeing with an RX-78-2, but the inner frame is also molded in 2 different grays, a really dark gray, but also this lighter gray, which helps poke out beyond the armor and give more color separation to the armor itself. The amount of parts in this kit make for a very exciting build. Only a few parts are very small, and there are really only 4 notable instances of small parts. I know that is a big concern for a lot of people with real grades, and I can assure you that the smaller pieces here are easy to place and don't cause a lot of headache during assembly of the kit. The pieces that immediately jump to mind are the vernier connector for the backpack, as well as the thrusters for the core fighter. As previously stated, the build itself is quite exciting. A lot of the appeal for that was the realistic details that are on the inner frame. The inner frame is incredibly detailed and looks fantastic, especially if you take the extra time to panel line it. That's what gives you the feel of building a real mech as you're building this kit. The assembly goes together quite nicely. However, I would caution some builders to stay true to the instructions as closely as possible. There are some specific joints in the knee and the elbow that need to be assembled at certain angles, and I could definitely see how some excited builders might forego these certain angles and try to force things to fit. The skirt also comes to mind as it needs to be inserted at a 45-degree angle and twisted into place in the socket, but not all the way through the hole into the joint. The circular joints on the elbow, knee, and ankle also must be inserted and then twisted into place. I was unable to do this with my fingers, and I had to use a pair of precision tweezers to get these to go into place. This is a good thing because it means these parts won't pop off. However, it does require some extra tools that you may not have, so just be on the lookout for that. Like many real grades since the real grade Tallgeese, this is a trouble-free kit to assemble, and I think you'll have a great time putting this kit together. There is a lot of fantastic engineering in this kit, and I think any builder will appreciate the forward thinking Bandai put into the design and build of this Gundam. Let's move on into articulation. Once again, the real grade line proves it is a masterclass of articulation. This kit does a great job bringing this classic design to modern day RG standards. The head is on a hinge joint in the head frame itself. This leads to a ball joint, and this gives the head a ton of articulation. With the hinge joint, the Gundam is able to look upwards quite a bit, almost all the way directly above, which is impressive. It can look down quite a bit as well, before it hits the collar armor. You can really nail that looking downward angry Katoki angle really well. There isn't much articulation tilt to the left or to the right of the head, it's quite minimal. The ball joint here on the head is primarily for left and right rotation rather than head tilt. As such, it can rotate a full 360 degrees to no one's surprise, but don't be looking for a head tilt on this kit. The torso can rotate above the waist a full 360 degrees. It's nice to have such a minimal build sometimes that doesn't have all these extra accessories that inhibit its articulation. The chest is what gets really impressive on this kit. The back locks the core fighter into place, so you don't have to worry about the articulation of the chest separating the Gundam. Everything is on a sliding gimmick, which allows the Gundam to have an ab crunch like we've never seen before. This is really impressive for an RX-78-2, which usually has a fairly static and non-articulate ab and chest crunch articulation. The chest does open up to reveal the core fighter and the cockpit. This is also required to remove the core fighter from the chest, which is relatively easy to do. All you have to do is open the cockpit, release the lock on the back, and the Gundam will split apart. The lock is easier to release with the backpack removed and using your fingernail to pry up on it. Now I know you're thinking, with the ab crunch like it is, they had to sacrifice articulation elsewhere, probably in the tilt of the torso, right? Well, that's where you're wrong. The torso does have side-to-side tilt articulation built right into the waist itself. It's not much, but considering the core block system, this is pretty decent and not really articulation I anticipated would even be here. The arms can rotate all the way around to make for some perfect windmill punches. The elbows are also on a nice double joint, allowing for a full 90-degree flex. The wrist is on a ball joint that leads into the hand, which is also on a ball joint. So you get a little bit of articulation in the wrist section, which is perfect for beam saber and fighting poses. The hand does everything you would anticipate a ball joint to do. It goes full 360 and a little bit up and down, left and right, yada yada. The shoulder armor has some opening gimmick to allow the arm a little more reach without fully turning the shoulder armor. This works wonders for beam saber poses and prevents the shoulder armor from appearing upside down when the Gundam pulls his weapon from the backpack. The shoulder armor can also slide up or down based on whatever pose you need this for. I didn't see much use for it, but I'm sure someone else will. The bicep can rotate 360 degrees going all the way around. Now the arm can come out slightly to an angle both back and forth. It's not a heck of a lot, and doesn't have as much reach as some other newer real grades, but it's still a decent amount, and still allows the Gundam to use the beam rifle with both hands as it was designed to. This shoulder joint can move upwards almost to a direct 90 degrees, with the shoulder armor moved in a certain direction. In fact, the only thing that stops this movement is the head. The arm can raise up a little higher than a T-pose, however anything higher than a T-pose, it wants to hit the head, and it does end up looking a little goofy. The skirt armor can open up to about 45 degrees all the way around. This can lead to a nearly 90-degree kick forward and a barely 35-degree kick backwards. The main leg connector can drop down, allowing for an almost 90-degree kick in the rear. This also nearly opens up the legs for a full split that's just a scotch off. The upper thigh can do a 90-degree rotation to the left or right, depending on the side, but stops when the upper thigh armor hits a certain point. This is fine because you don't really need full 360-degree rotation on the upper thigh. The knee joint is double jointed, so you get a good compression on the leg joint. The feet are on a double swivel, one at the ankle joint and one on the foot itself, so you can get a decent tilt left or right. The ankle armor can move up and down as far as the foot sees fit, but here's a great bit of engineering. Because the foot joint would be restrictive moving backwards, Bandai added a swivel joint on the armor of the back of the calf to allow the foot to lean backwards. This allows it to come back quite a bit, which is required for some poses such as jumping, kneeling, etc. The foot joint is also on 3 moving joints, one that swings backwards in the back, forward in the center, and another one for a toe bend. Surprisingly, the backpack actually does have some articulation. The beam sabers can swing forward and all the way backwards. This allows the Gundam to use the bazooka without the beam saber getting in the way. The verniers can also swing downwards and upwards. That about wraps it up for articulation. This kit does a great job allowing the Gundam to pull off nearly any pose you can imagine, especially some really iconic ones from the original anime. Having gone over all the articulation, that should give you a fairly good idea of what type of poses you would be able to pull off with this kit. This kit doesn't beat the real grade God Gundam in terms of posability, however, it comes close and is possibly the most articulated RX-78-2 that we have to date. This is a big step up over the original RG 1.0 that did have its quirks with posing, usually due to the advanced MS joint as its primary skeletal structure for the inner frame. With the 2.0 inner frame, everything is rock solid, and you don't have to worry about anything while pulling off these dynamic poses. This kit has an easy time standing, and I don't foresee this guy falling from the shelf anytime soon. The Gundam comes outfitted for war with its fairly standard loadout. The RG 2.0 includes a beam rifle, which does have its own inner frame, a shield with some really nice raised panel lines on it, which can also attach to the backpack, a bazooka which is iconic for the original Gundam and can also attach to a mount on the back of the mobile suit. The Gundam includes left and right closed fists, left and right open hands, left and right beam saber hands, and one right-handed shooting hand for the beam rifle, as well as the bazooka. It includes 2 beam sabers and 2 beam saber blades, a pretty standard loadout for the RX-78-2, and nothing important was forgotten here. We've talked about the build, the articulation, the accessories, but let's get into the little bit of extras. Let's talk about color correcting. Being that this kit is a real grade, there's no color correcting stickers included with this kit, which is such a huge appeal to the RG line. There are some chrome stickers for added appeal, however, I never really add these as I don't ever find that they look good. There are some red and green navigation light type stickers for the shoulder armor, however, I wouldn't necessarily consider this color correcting, just something small to note. If you were opposed to these stickers, it's plenty easy to paint the black frame armor of the shoulder itself to have these details painted rather than stickered. With a kit this detailed, it's just begging for you to panel line it. I panel line this kit straight on the runner using Tamiya panel liner and cleaning up with Zippo lighter fluid. I didn't run into any parts cracking or discoloration, but this is also a technique I've worked on quite a bit. This kit does have a lot of panel lines to it, and most are deep enough that a pore type panel liner can run no problem. There are a handful that I had to use the Pigma Micron .003 pen on, such as the shield bits and a handful of other minor places. This kit will take you forever with a pen, but it is doable. I would recommend getting a plastic safe pore type panel liner or hone your Tamiya skills to panel line this kit, or else you'll spend a long time panel lining it. There is no denying how fantastic this design looks once it's been panel lined, just take heed and make sure you're ready, as it's a little advanced of a kit to panel line, especially if you're going to panel line the frame itself. The bane of every kit's existence is going to be seam lines and nub marks. The seam lines on this kit are essentially non-existent, as this is a real grade and as such has been designed with its seam lines cleverly disguised as panel lines. I can tell you where the seam lines are at, but they blend in so well, there's really no reason to. You can even panel line these and it will blend in perfectly as a panel line. There is no need for thin cement on this build, it's perfectly fine out of the box. In terms of nub marks, this kit does a good job of undergating most of these armor pieces that even if you screw up a cut, it would be hard to notice the nub, except for in a few places. This kit was fully cut using the 2-cut method with God hand nippers. The most notable nub marks are on the fist hands, right on the pointer finger, which sticks out like a sore thumb, unfortunately, especially if you're in the Katoki pose. Parts of the beam rifle itself have some nub marks, however these are relatively small and hard to see. And one nasty nub right on the upper chest cockpit area. This is a place you'll want to sand or use a gun primer razor on. The nubs aren't too bad. They're mostly well hidden, and the kit itself has a large amount of parts undergated. Just be sure to use your best judgment and sand a few of those larger nubs when you see them, especially when you know they'll be on the armor facing outwards. One of the big perks of the RG line is inclusion of real type stickers. Sadly, these are not waterslide decals, but for the beginner builder, these are nice and simple to apply with some precision tweezers. The stickers for this kit are well planned out. There isn't a reason to trim excess clear outlines off the stickers like you may find in some other real grades. You will be able to notice these stickers when you look closely at the kit. However, if you clear coat the kit, it does help hide them a little bit better than if you hadn't. This kit in particular has been clear coated with Mr. Hobby Super Matte Clear. I followed the sticker layout verbatim from the manual, except for the head. I did add 2 of the caution type stickers to the head as I felt it could use a little something extra. The stock layout is perfectly fine and wonderfully balanced. It's not too light and it's not super heavy like a race car. Final verdict. This kit is going to retail for about $37 or so once it hits the States. I think this is a fair price given the price of real grades recently has gone up. This is about a $6 increase over the real grade 1.0, and I think the amount of detail, build experience, and stability of the build is well worth the extra $6. I had an absolute blast building this kit, and I had even more fun posing it and figuring out all of its nuanced features and details.
Now that this kit has been released a little bit overseas, there have been some builders that have experienced an issue with the Vulcan guns on the head not protruding enough into the actual armor of the head. I personally don't think my build looks too bad or even too far off from the box art. However, if this is something you are unsatisfied with, there are ways to cut in clearance and make the Vulcan guns protrude more into the armor. Honestly, my main gripe with this kit is that we just don't have a way to display the core fighter next to the Gundam itself. That was something that the RG 1.0 even was able to do. They had a core block system that sat within the inner frame so you could have the core fighter displayed next to the actual Gundam itself. The chest articulation is a little bit baked into the core fighter itself. There's a slight swivel in there where the upper torso connects to, and that's probably why we didn't get a type of core block system to put there, just because the articulation is there. I know someone's creating a 3D file for that, so you can 3D print a core block system and have the core fighter next to the Gundam and display it in all of its glory. However, I don't have a 3D printer, so I will more than likely miss out on that add-on unless something like New Type or Gundam Place decides to carry an accessory like that. This is really the only issue I had with the kit, and it's not even an issue with the build itself, so I'm really not going to knock the kit for it. It's just more of an issue with Bandai's planning on this kit for not giving us a way to display both the Gundam and the core fighter.
The new core fighter is quite detailed and I like it a lot. I just think it's a little funny that the original RG 1.0 gave us something that this 2.0 didn't give us, which is a displayable core fighter. More of a nitpick than an actual complaint. But I digress. The only thing I would caution builders with is to just take your time, enjoy the build, and pay attention to the manual. Despite not having a ton of small parts, this is still a relatively complex build and may require the use of tools beyond just nippers and sanders. Make sure you have your tweezers ready for some of these build steps, as it will help immensely. Being a massive fan of the Real Grade line, the original RX-78-2 design, and model kit technology, I think this kit is an absolute buy whenever you're able to get your hands on it. Even if you are just an MG builder, I think you will still have a good time with this kit, as it's just as complex as some master grades out there. Even if you're not a big fan of the original Gundam design, this is still well worth the build experience to see how much technology they were able to pack into this 1/144 scale package. This was the absolutely perfect kit to celebrate 45 years of Gundam and 14 years of Real Grade.